bold predictions in August accumulated, and we are recapping those bold predictions in January. And it's a lot more fun this time of year because I swing and miss all the time. That's not fun for me to talk about. But when you guys swing and miss, charitably, it's fun for me to talk about. Let's take a look at 5 more of them tonight. This one was fun. This one was spirited in the preseason. The Clemson Tigers, said Adam, will return to the top and reclaim the national championship from Anderson, South Carolina. This was, look, I put a 7 on this on the boldness scale. And the reason is because Clemson did have the 4th best odds to win the title in the preseason. They were at plus 1,000. And we also knew that they had a workable schedule. However, at no point in this season did this seem like a realistic possibility. And that's even after they started 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-0. They started 8-0. They were still playing some leaky football. They beat Wake by 6. That's a game that really could have gone either way. They won that game at Florida State, and they won against Syracuse, but then they got pasted by Notre Dame. And that's really, I thought, the exposure game. But even before that, quarterback play wasn't where it needed to be. So at no point did I feel like this prediction was ever going to hit. Also, they finished outside the top 30 in virtually every offensive statistic that we care about. So as much as the preseason odds said, that's not that bold, it ended up being pretty bold. Now, is anyone ready to make that prediction for this upcoming year? We'll see. Next up, I don't necessarily know how we were supposed to measure this one, but we'll give it a try anyway. James said the SEC will not be viewed as the best conference in 2022. The Big Ten will reign. Now, the Big Ten put 2 playoff teams in the 4-team college football playoff. I still think James missed here. I still think the SEC was the best conference in college football this year. And I could use either argument, to be honest with you. You know, sometimes people like to use bowl records, which I think is ludicrous because bowls are not equally seeded. So it doesn't really matter when the SEC 5 plays the ACC's 2. We're not getting a heads-up comparative analysis of conference strength. But having said that, I could just tell you that I thought top to bottom the SEC had more high-caliber teams. But if you wanted to do the old bowl argument, I could tell you at Georgia, we all know what they did. And Georgia completely and totally annihilated TCU. They played for a conference championship. Alabama played a conference champion in the Sugar Bowl, annihilated them. Clemson, a conference champion, goes down to Tennessee. Purdue played in their conference championship game, and LSU did all sorts of unspeakable things to them. So I could even use the bowl protocol argument here. I think the SEC, you could call it a little bit down if you wanted to. I still think the SEC, they finished with 3 of the top 6 programs in the country. But see, the Big Ten finished with 3 of the top 7. So the Big Ten was very good. I just think when you got past that first layer there and we were to compare the next layer, that's when it falls off a little bit. That's when you'd have a little issue. The Big Ten was a very good conference this year. The bigger question is, how wide was the gap between 2 and 3? That would be the question. Next up, boy, this one's painful. Could be the Sarah McLachlan special of predictions here. The prediction from Anthony is pretty lengthy. I'm just going to save you some time. Auburn wins 9 games in 2022. Friends, if you add what Auburn wins this year with what, that was a big hiccup, with what they won last year, yeah, they'll probably win 9 games. This was not happening in 2022. So Auburn went 5-7. Pretty well documented. They beat Mercer. They beat San Jose State. I can't believe it, but somehow they beat Missouri. They beat A&M. Of course they beat A&M. Hoopst didn't. And they beat Western Kentucky. And outside of that, it was kind of splatter city, except that there's this weird stat. You know, if I were to tell you Auburn had 5 games this year where they scored under 20 points, you would say, gross. Well, there's 5 of the losses. Nope. 2 of those were wins. 2 of those games they won and didn't even score 20 points. So it was a very weird season there. Of course, Brian Harsin got fired, and it was very very much a lost season after that. There's not much more to say there. Auburn did not come close to winning 9 games. Next up, this one, somehow it still came close, which is the nature of the Big Ten West. Ryan said Iowa will make it back to the Big Ten championship despite the difficult schedule is very relative here, but despite the difficult schedule from College Station, Texas. If you think that Auburn offense was bad, we had the Iowa Hawkeyes to counter it. Iowa sees Auburn have 5 games where they score 20 or less, and they say, watch this. And they have 7 of them. They only played 12 regular season. They had 7 of them where they scored 20 points or less. Managed to score 21 in the bowl game. They were the favorite, even with all that ineptitude. Their division was so average, they were the favorite to go to the conference championship game entering the last week of the season. And then they lost to Nebraska, and then it was Purdue that ended up going. So, the Big Ten West. Your champion of the Big Ten West was Purdue with a 6-3 conference record. They ended up 8-6 on the season. That was your division champion. Last up here, this one I found interesting. I was intrigued by it, but I thought it was extremely, extremely bold. Mike said the AAC will have 3 teams undefeated going into the final week in October, and at least one will be in the top 10. This did not happen. In fact, they had 0 undefeated teams going into that week. Tulane was 7-1. Cincy was 6-1. UCF was 5-2. At this point in the season, there were only 6 undefeated teams in the entire AP Top 25. And there was no, forget the AAC, there was no conference in America at that point that had 3 undefeated teams. So Mike was just set up for failure from the outset. I put a 9.5 on that one. That one was going to be really, really tough. Vintage AAC would have a hard time doing that.
Guys, thanks for watching Late Kick. Make sure and leave a comment. I love interacting with you. But most of all, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. That's how we keep all of this free.